Mel, 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 Mel. Everybody, I'm Cantonese Cat. Everyone, Cantonese Cat here. If you remember this big giant red candle back in December 2022, as well as this further downside in January 2023, when price got down to about 100, the sentiment throughout the entire bull market has been built up to be extremely bullish. The narrative was extremely bullish, and as the price continued to went down from its peak around November 2021, every single dip ended up getting bought. And a lot of people are, because they're so bullish on the whole narrative, because they're so bullish with the recency bias that Tesla just going to keep going higher, they ended up buying on every dip. And when they don't have money, they end up buying on margin. And when they don't have enough money and they were already on margin, they get margin called. This is really a great deleveraging. There's probably a lot of toxic leverage that's been building up for a very, very long time. When you can't just not have a huge amount of leverage as price went from like $12 all the way to like 400. There's a lot of deleveraging that needed to happen before the price can go up higher. And I can say that I don't think that people are really voluntarily selling over here. I think that a lot of times they're just kind of leveraged and they have to get margin called. And what ended up happening is these shares may have traded hands from a lot of the retail investors or even funds that are over leveraging, end up going to institutions. As price continue went up from about 400 going down to about 100, you see that institutional accumulation, institutional ownership has jumped exponentially during that period of time. This is not a mystery. Like, this is what they do. They cause price to go down, and they cause the stock to switch hands from retail to investors to institutional ownership to whales. Like, this is not anything that should be surprising to you. The question is, when it got to about 100 and we went back up, right? The highest it got back down up to is around 300 or so. What's that going to end up being it? Will we just keep on going up higher, or is it going to end up having a little bit more deleveraging? For Tesla stock, this is a little bit of a tough one, because all Tesla has done ever since its inception is it's just been looking like it's going to roll over, but it doesn't. You're looking like it's going to roll over, but it doesn't. Looking like it's going to roll over, but it doesn't. Looking like it's going to roll over, but it doesn't. Now it'll also again look like it's going to roll over. And so far we actually got a pretty decent size hammered candle over here. If the month of April closes here, this is actually quite bullish, because these hammered candles usually represent either a bottom or a top. I can show you. Like, basically, this is how the bottom over here was being set in February 2016. If you look at February 2020, it had an inverted hammer over here, which has served as a top. And when you have something like that, price just flush all the way down, right? So that's a pretty good inverted hammer top right there. You also have another very, very nice hammer bottom that was put over here before price went up for another lick higher, right? Now, keep in mind that just because you see a hammer bottom, it doesn't mean that price is going to keep on pushing up higher, right? It doesn't happen necessarily like that. If you see that the hammer over here, price went sideways for another year before going up, right? You see a hammer over here, this is kind of like a quick flush, because this is a little bit of a strange situation because it's COVID. But over here, you can see you have a little bit of hammer bottom, and price just doesn't immediately go up. It actually went sideways for about half a year before its final lick up, right? So there's a potential once you see a hammer candle over here, it doesn't necessarily mean it's just going to end up flushing all the way up again. It just means that it's found some solid grounding over here, it's found some solid demand over here, and there's a potential that this could have been the bottom wick over here, and it doesn't end up going back and test the wick with a candlestick. And it could just be end up going sideways for a little bit longer, maybe a few months or so, before going up higher, right? That's kind of what I'm looking at here. And a lot of the traditional indicators that I generally like to use is not working out very well for Tesla at all. For example, if I look at the Ichimoku cloud, looks like it's a falling knife, just broke underneath the cloud, right? It's the first time that Tesla has really truly close underneath the monthly Ichimoku cloud. And granted, the Ichimoku cloud hasn't really been around for that long, but it's really the first time that Tesla has really closed underneath the Ichimoku cloud. Sometimes a chart can look so bad that it might actually not be a bad thing. Bitcoin does this all the time. It breaks underneath the monthly Ichimoku cloud, spend a few months underneath, and it just kind of push back above, right? So it's not really an entirely bad thing that I'm seeing here, but some of the traditional stuff is still showing that it might be a falling knife. This hammer candle might have changed things here a little bit, though. The other common indicator I generally like to use that, again, it's not going to be very favorable for Tesla is this Bollinger Band here on the monthly. You can see that the 20-month moving average, I generally like to see price kind of get back above, and for a 20-month moving average to kind of curl flat, maybe even point up a little bit before I can confirm that the bear market is over. But Tesla just doesn't do that. Like, it's just not this behavior. It doesn't care. Whenever it wants to go up, it goes up. In the previous cycle here too, and the Bollinger Band actually keeps on kind of like squeezing here a little bit too, kind of like what happened in the last cycle. Again, I can't really say that this is going to happen. This is over here, but I can totally see that price consolidate maybe another few months or so, kind of like it did over here, and maybe cause the 20-month moving average maybe start to flatten out a little bit more. Maybe potentially use that to attack it and see whether or not it can break back above. Right. So a lot of these kind of traditional things here I'm showing here may not necessarily work out very well for Tesla, just because it keeps on looking like a falling knife over and over and over and over again. That's just what Tesla does. Right? So what do we use to try to figure out what it might be doing? I did look into a couple other ways to look into Tesla, and I shared this on X on several posts. One of which is to look at the long-term Elliott Wave structure. Now, I'm not an Elliott Wave expert by any means. I dabble in a little bit, but this really just looks like a very classic kind of Elliott Wave pattern here. Now, these are quality charts. This is a quarterly chart. Each candle represents about 3 months of price action. And what I'm really seeing here from the inception since 2010, you really see that it's been making a couple of waves here on this bull market. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Generally, when you're talking about an up leg, you're talking about usually it separates into 5 waves. 1, 2, 2 is down, 3 is up, 4 is down, 5 is up. Right. Usually 3 is the longest one. So actually, not usually. Based on Elliott Wave theory, 3 is the longest one. So, and when after you've gone through about 5 waves, you might have a correction, kind of like an ABC correction kind of thing. And you're going to end up having another 5 wave going up, right? If this is a bull market. And after the 5 wave is done, you're going to have another ABC correction. And then after that, if this is indeed a bull market, you're going to end up having a resumption of yet another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave up. And this whole structure over here can end up being a greater structure where this could be the wave 1 over here. This could be wave 2 over here. Wave 3 is the longest and the strongest, and that's why we have such a big, powerful bull market over here from 2 to 3. And usually, from 3 to 4, and then 5 may be a little bit shorter, right? And we might be potentially entering this bulk of the wave 5 over here, if that's what we're seeing here, if this is all correct, right? And that explains as to why this big giant bull market over here that spanned for a period of about like 6 to 7 months or so, I would say. That explains why this is so very, very powerful, and this is why everybody's just kind of shocked by this, because the wave 3 of the Elliott overall wave 3, this is usually going to be the strongest, most powerful move, right? So maybe that's why it's so memorable. I still think that probably if this whole structure is correct, and so far there's not really anything to invalidate this, I mean, you really have to talk about this candle have to go a lot lower before you have like true invalidation of this overall structure. But overall, the structure is still intact if you believe in Elliott Wave. But because of how striking this looks, I just can't help but to show it. And if you look at the Elliott Wave theory, like what you can think right here is basically it just looks like I've been buying here at some pretty decent spot over here. I'm buying at the C wave over here. I'm buying at towards the middle to the end of the 2 wave over here. So maybe these are favorable spots to buy if this turns out to be a valid structure. I don't know. We'll see. Another thing I've been showing here on X is that this really looks like a very, very similar fractal over here this cycle so far compared to the last. It just seems that whenever you have a big giant leg up, you're going to need multiple cooldowns for Tesla. And again, it's just maybe it's just Tesla's personality that it needs to do that. But these are Heikin-Ashi candles, just kind of the way for me to kind of smooth out the candles. You have a nice horizontal zone over here, and you have these kind of diagonal bear market trend lines over here. That it breaks above one of them, forms another one, and kind of back tested the last one before pushing up higher. It's just kind of looking like what it's about to do potentially. Now again, I don't think it's going to just like blast out from here. I think probably going to end up having a little bit of consolidation over here for months, going sideways here for months, work up some technicals before potentially challenging up here. And I don't even necessarily think that it's going to necessarily just break above that on the first trial like it did over here. It might end up getting rejected and going that down and going back up, doing some back tests and going up higher. Like, this is not a guarantee by any means, right? It's very interesting though is that so far this fractal is working out, and there are really two ways that stocks can bottom. One is capitulation at these high volume sell off over here. Another way, this is another capitulation over here, right? Another way that stocks can bottom is it actually can just bottom when sellers get exhausted, right? Like over here, like sellers just get completely exhausted over here, and that's when you bottom. Over here, I think we might be getting a little bit of like a seller exhaustion bottom over here, and overall actually looks pretty decent. Now, I've also shown you from the other charts that I've shown you before in terms of there's an indicator that I like to use, which is the Blackhead L3 Vanker Fund Flow Trend Oscillator. In terms of what it's been doing, if you just look at the monthly, it looks absolutely atrocious. You know, like it just looks absolutely atrocious. Like it's a downtrend, and it just looks like whale outflow is still happening right now. One thing to remember: this is an oscillator, it's a trend oscillator, so it tells you that the trend so far is still a little bit more outflow. But the thing about Tesla is there's the night is always the darkest before dawn. The thing is, like when you're seeing over here, there's an acceleration of selling, right? There's acceleration of selling over here, and well, outflow is happening, right? But it can flip very, very quickly. Over here, again, acceleration, but it can flip very, very quickly, right? Over here, there's acceleration, but it can flip very quickly. So this doesn't really scare me in terms of what I'm seeing over here. If you look at it weekly, you actually see a lot more detail in terms of what the whales may be doing. You're seeing a pretty significant decrease in the outflow. Matter of fact, I think this month, like, it's really, really started to reverse the trend over here. Just like the bottom over here, whenever the bottom over here was formed, you can see that this trend is starting to reverse over here, where there might be a decrease in outflow and starting to turn back into inflows, right? So you're not gonna necessarily have to wait for the buy signal and have to wait for whales to kind of come in. Although if you're one of those folks that do want to wait for confirmation, you can certainly wait for these kind of confirmation candles over here, where info is really is being confirmed, right? You can wait for that, but you don't have to. If you want to catch a falling knife and see whether or not you did a good job in catching a falling knife, you can catch falling knife earlier by looking at the fund flow. As long as the fund flow looking as maybe starting to reduce, outflow maybe starting to having increased inflow. It might be a good spot to consider if you're one of those folks that wants to catch falling knife if you don't care. The daily is bullish. Like you have increase in well fund flow coming in. That's no question. So I think there is a lot of potential trend change here that you might be looking at that is favorable for Tesla. I'm gonna go back here a little bit to the actually let's go back to the monthly chart here. If you just look at the RSI, it's not going to tell you so much. Usually for RSI, I like to look for divergences, bullish divergence, bearish divergence. I'm not really seeing a whole heck look like a bearish or bullish divergence over here. And right now, price just kind of look like it's just kind of hanging around. RSI is around like 40s. It's not anything significant to look at. Same thing looking at the weekly. Weekly did get an RSI going down to like the 30s, which in general for the history of Tesla is pretty low. It is in oversold territory, and a lot of people, whenever it's oversold, they're always going to say, yeah, it can stay oversold for a very long time, and it did. RSI was down in the 30s, and when price was around like 180s, it ended up getting oversold even more, right? I mean, it continued to be at the 30s, but price went from the 180s all the way down to like 140s, right? So you don't want to just buy an oversold condition. If you do, you just realize that you might end up being buying a falling knife over here, and you have to be okay with that, right? But RSI is not going to really tell you too much of a story here, besides the fact that yeah, it is being sold pretty significantly. So what's going to tell you a little bit more here? Are there any indicators that's going to be able to tell you more in terms of divergences? Yeah, actually there is. I like to look at relatively newer indicator I've been following more closely over the last couple of months, which is the on-balance volume. This is a way to calculate volume and tell you whether or not there's increased or decreased buying pressure in relative to the price, right? So right off the bat, something that's very interesting that I've been seeing for the last couple of months now is price have dropped from here to here pretty significantly, but the OBV actually has trended up, right? This is actually a pretty classic bullish divergence that you're seeing here. It's a very nice bullish divergence that's seeing here, which basically tells you that there actually is a lot of bullish energy that's been building up here during this downtrend as calculated by volume. You can also see based on volume, there's also, like the selling volume is actually decreasing. The buying volume actually is higher than selling volume, but yet price continues to go down. So there's a little bit of divergence over there, right? If you look at the weekly, you're going to see this even more apparent. Like this weekly divergence of the OBV and price is actually gone on for a lot longer. I'm going to see if I can kind of align these things a little bit better for you so you can see it more clearly. This is a very, very clear, bullish divergence over here. This bullish divergence has been building up for quite some time. On the weekly, it's been building up for almost like, 9 months. So I'm not saying that, price is going to go up because this bullish divergence has been building up, and yet price kept on going down and down, right? This is a perfect example that you can have price continue to go down on a bullish divergence. Bullish divergence doesn't mean that you're going to just flip immediately. It just means a bunch of bullish energy is being built up, and wherever it ends up being released, and we don't know when that's going to be, it's going to be pretty powerful. Do I think it's going to just be bouncing up like that, going up higher? No, I think it's probably going to end up oscillating around here, going to work up some technicals, and maybe last for a few months here, going a little bit sideways, can kind of consolidate over here before it goes up. Maybe, right? But so far it's building up a bunch of bullish energy over here. So I'm actually more, as price keeps going down and down and down, I'm actually more bullish than I'm bearish, as opposed to the common, sentiment where price continue to go down, people get more and more bearish and thinking that there's going to be more downside coming, don't catch a falling knife, things like that. I mean, obviously you do what you have to do. You have your own style. If you want to wait for confirmation, that's fine. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing. There is not, unfortunately, a bullish engulfing candle. It looked like it was going to form one, but it didn't quite form one. Price probably going to end up going sideways here a little bit. I don't really anticipate for it to push up. You're going to end up probably having a little bit more chop over here. If you look at the moving averages, it's also going to be a little bit more ambiguous here too. The moving averages really don't know what it wants to do. The orange one here is the 20, the blue one here is the 50, the black one here is 100. You did end up having a bullish cross like 50 over 100. Traditionally looking, these 50 and 100, blue over black, are generally considered to be, more bullish, right? I don't know how in this particular instance it's going to apply because price is underneath right here, and 20 is also underneath both of these. So I don't necessarily know how to apply. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag, if you will, right? But it's interesting that 50 is flat, and I think 50 is probably going to end up dropping down, but 100 is probably also going to drop down with it. It's a little bit ambiguous. All I have to say, though, is, again, Tesla doesn't have to do what you want it to do, because you can have a full bull trend. Next thing you know, within a few months, it just completely reverses and become very, very parabolic, right? This is just a part of Tesla's personality. And over here, also same thing, right? You have a full bull trend, you have a full bear trend over here. Next thing you know, price doesn't care. It just went from 100 to 300. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to follow the rules of what other stocks do. Very interesting stock. One other thing I want to talk about real quick, I generally don't like to talk about the daily chart that much because it's just a lot of noise. It doesn't really tell me too much in terms of my interested time frame, which is going to be more like weeks, months, and years. But if you just pull up, like a lot of people are bearish on earnings, I just don't see how that was going to be like the play for earnings is to like short Tesla because you're talking about six daily candles closing underneath the daily Bollinger Band, like one, two, three, four, five, six, like all of this. This has never happened before with Tesla. One, two, three, four, five, six closing below the low Bollinger Band. You're gonna have some kind of like minimally some kind of mean reversion, like all the way back up here to the 20-day moving average. Sure enough, like earnings came, push all the way up, right? It's pushing above the 20-day moving average, which is a relatively bullish sign. You actually also want, if you're looking at a certain time frame, you always want the price to spend more time on the upper part of the Bollinger Band than on the lower part of the Bollinger Band to give you the trend, right? So the fact that it's kind of staying above that is great. Do I think it's going to probably back test this down here a little bit before further bullish continuation? Certainly, right? Can it linger on here for longer and do more consolidation, wait for Bollinger Bands to squeeze a lot longer for a few months before pushing up higher? That's certainly a possibility, right? But I just don't see how this is like a bearish setup for earnings. One, two, three, four, five, six. Like that's never happened before. Like if it was with any index, any other stocks, crypto, like this is like a short-term buy signal. I don't trade these moves, but I mean that was pretty. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm gonna end the video by saying this: if you're looking at Tesla, I think it's still probably going to need a little bit more chop over here for a lot longer. I think it probably bottomed over here at the wick. Can it go down and touch and feel some of this wick over here before going up? Certainly it can. But I do think that most likely we found a local bottom. Am I absolutely sure about it? No. I'm not going to go all leverage and degen into Tesla right now. I'm going to end up still buying very, very slowly and trying to accumulate what I can very, very slowly. But I think bottom's probably in based on what I'm seeing with the institutions, institution buying over here, based on what I'm seeing with the fractals, based on this hammer candle. And also another thing that I also want to say too here, also based on one more thing, is that the volume weighted average price from people who bought the bottom over here in 2019, people are still in profit. So you're gonna have like all these long-term bulls. They're like, oh, whatever. I'm not gonna sell. I'm still in profit. They're still in profit. And matter of fact, if they're still in profit, you have like this big deleveraging that happened. A lot of the long-term bulls are actually gonna end up coming back and buying. This is what it's telling you. Usually these kind of volume-weighted average price or VWAP, they can serve as resistance or support. And right now it's been serving as pretty strong support twice now for Tesla. So that's another thing to kind of think about it. Now, you're also always going to have a lot of people making fundamental arguments. And they're not wrong. I mean, you're looking at balance sheets, you're looking at the lack of growth, you're looking at the high valuation. They're not wrong to make these points. The counterpoint is that the fundamentalists, they're generally lagging. They're generally not going to time things very well. They can say, oh, this is going to last for this long. I mean, Tesla is a cyclical stock. EV is a cyclical thing. Where the cycle bottoms, nobody really knows, but I sure as heck am not going to listen to like fundamentalists to tell me that you have way too much inventory, and because basically that's what happened with Nvidia. Back in October, November, you start seeing all these posts like, oh, inventory is at all-time high, they're having a hard time moving, and then that's when the stock bottoms, right? So I'm not, anyway. Last couple things to kind of close out. I did end up signing up for stock tweets, so if you want to add me on there, same handle as I do have X, CryptoCanToCat. And the last thing I want to add is my analysis so far is actually, I'm doing very separate things compared with these guys, but I'm seeing very similar things I'm seeing in terms of what I expect with price action moving forward with Tesla Tracker, right? Handle is SB Zung, as well as another great follow here, the Great Masby, who's 13. You want to give these guys a follow, that'd be much appreciated. All right, I'm going to end the video right here. Take care. Bye.